Have you ever wondered what goes on in the mind and the heart of a dismissive avoidant attachment style after an argument? Well, if this is something that you're curious about or are a dismissive avoidant attachment style, even better, trying to understand yourself after an argument, this is a video for you. In this video, we're going to go through the four stages of what a DA experiences after an argument. And we'll talk about some healthy action steps that you can take if you are either the DA yourself or the loved one of a dismissive avoidant, so that you can move through these situations with a lot more grace and ease. If you're new here, my name is Thais. I am the creator of the Personal Development School and of this channel, and I put daily videos out for individuals like yourself who may be interested in learning about the subconscious mind, personal development, and taking action steps that are really tangible and solution oriented to improve the quality of their life by improving the quality of their relationships. So, if you are really curious about this, it makes a lot of sense because dismissive avoidant attachment style, they're often so stoic, right? You may not even realize what they're feeling or experiencing, but it doesn't mean that they're not feeling things. Yes, dismissive avoidants are better at compartmentalizing as a general rule than the vast majority of people, but it doesn't mean that those emotions aren't there. And it also doesn't mean that those emotions aren't going to bubble back up after the very first stage. This first stage is the shutdown or stonewalling stage. When a dismissive avoidant does not feel good in a conflict or argument, when they feel stuck or trapped, or like they can't solve for something and they don't know how to make it better, eventually part of them shuts down internally and they kind of numb themselves to their emotions. Now, this is often taken by a partner or a loved one as them stonewalling the partner and pushing the partner away, which of course is the experience that the partner has. But the dismissive avoidance internal relationship to it, the vast majority of the time, is actually to try to remove their relationship to their own feelings. Dismissive avoidants do not feel safe feeling their own feelings. It didn't feel safe to feel their feelings growing up in their household or environment. So, what they do is they try to get as far away from their own feelings as possible by numbing and shutting down. And they're not really trying to get away from the person as much as they're trying to get rid of any cause to feel something that makes them feel deeply uncomfortable. And this brings us to stage two, which is our distancing stage. It is within this stage that a dismissive avoidant often feels vulnerable. They don't like to feel so much, and they realize on some subconscious level that, wow, this person's making me feel a lot, and I don't like this feeling of vulnerability to this person. And so this often happens on autopilot, but what happens is the dismissive avoidance starts to deactivate. And one of the big ways that they will deactivate is to distance themselves by convincing themselves they don't need this person. Now, they won't so much do what the fearful avoidant does, like convincing themselves that they're in the wrong relationship when they're really triggered, but they will do a lot of like pulling away. So they'll sort of convince themselves that like even if this doesn't work, I'd be fine. If we don't end up together, it's not going to matter anyways. The wording will be slightly different. The fearful avoidant might say things like, "This person's wrong for me," whereas the dismissive avoidance version is often things like, "If it doesn't work out, I would still be okay." So there's a pretty different relationship. Maybe I'll make a separate video about the DA versus FA distancing strategies. But this distancing strategy stage is where they start to kind of convince themselves that they don't need this person and that they aren't going to be that affected by this person. They may even try to convince themselves that this argument isn't even affecting them that much. Who cares about this? Why bother trying to communicate about this? It won't matter anyways. These kinds of components in their internal dialogue. And again, at a subconscious level, these are distancing strategies that are designed to be self preservation methods. Now, once they've had enough space and time, so long as that space and time hasn't been violated by, I shouldn't say violated because it's not even the right word. It is violated, but it's not that the person's doing something violating, if that makes sense. Like if, they're trying to take space and that space hasn't been crossed in some way by somebody constantly reaching out or texting, it's not like you're violating the person by doing it. But in theory, the dismissive avoidant has this like invisible boundary that they're not communicating. So somebody doesn't realize they have the boundary and they kind of accidentally violate it, if that makes sense. And so because of this, as long as that invisible boundary hasn't been crossed, then a dismissive avoidant, if they have had enough space and time, will go into the recovery and connection stage. And it's in this stage that although they may not reach out for connection internally, they start to reconnect to their own emotions and they start to connect to how they felt about the person before the argument. They may miss the person a little bit. Think about reaching out Hope the other person reaches out. Now, they are so stoic that they won't do this in a very obvious manner, but they will be there, kind of hoping to reconnect in some way. Now, when a dismissive avoidant reconnect, they don't like to go 0 to 60. They don't like to go right back into like super expressing their feelings. They're slower to warm back up again. They kind of need to restabilize and rebuild the sense of like connection slowly over time until it feels safer and safer. And then they'll let their guard back down, which takes time. And obviously, for people of other attachment styles, can sometimes be frustrating who have a different relationship to what they feel after a conflict. But this is useful information to keep in mind so you can find these sort of middle grounds between your attachment style and somebody else's. Now, before I go into the fourth stage here, and talk about what it is and what you can do. If you are curious about the dismissive avoidant and you want to know a lot more about the dismissive avoidant in each of the stages of relationships, so how they're going to be in the dating stage versus the honeymoon versus the power struggle, or in the commitment stage later on after we skip a stage in between. There's six major stages that every single relationship goes through and every person with an attachment style goes through, which is every single person because everyone has an attachment style. But it can give you a roadmap for how to navigate those things so much more effectively. And I'll put a link down below to check out that course fully for free. For a limited time. So I'll put that down there if you're interested. And this brings me to the fourth stage, which is the curiosity and learning stage. Generally, dismissive avoidance, if they can have a healthy discussion with somebody they're in a relationship with, where things are above board, it's safe, people are communicating in a more logical way, they'll actually want to be curious about what they can learn and take away from the conflict and how they can improve next time. But they won't get there if there's a lot of unsafe conflict, a lot of heated communication. People aren't seeing and hearing each other. So the more that that's there, and that's not one person's responsibility, it's both, right? The other attachment style as well as the dismissive avoidance responsibility to have that healthy communication. But the more that that is there, the more they'll actually move into curiosity and learning and try to prevent this from happening again in the future in some form. What do they do? What can they do differently? But if there feels like there's too much criticism or too much heatedness in the argument between both parties, because it can very much go both ways, DAs will shut down more to protect themselves and they won't often achieve that curiosity and learning stage the way that they would if there's healthy discussion. So, hopefully, this gives you a lot of insight into yourself as a DA or into dismissive avoidance if you're the loved one of a DA, trying to understand the four stages that they're experiencing after an argument. If you have more questions about this, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you. Also, if you're enjoying this channel, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing. I would really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you in future videos. Thank you for watching.